All right, so kind of a bellying up, JCS/bellying up. Obviously, with all of the storm activity and the hurricane and the displacement of staff, and obviously, power outages and the like, we've had to kind of make do. First and foremost, we want to say to all of you, hopefully, wherever it is that you're listening to this, you are safe and your loved ones are safe, and certainly hope that there was no property damage or any of those things. That's fairly obvious, but I do know, just because I've had family affected by the storm, everybody's alive, and we're certainly fine here in Tallahassee, where I'm recording this now. That a lot of people have been affected by the storm, so our thoughts are with you guys. Obviously, hang in there. Hopefully, this provides a needed distraction for now. Tom and I are going to discuss the game. And in lieu of having an official show today, we thought this would be the best way to get some content out there to you, Florida State, SMU, and still be able to, thank our sponsors and do all the things that we do on Libations Friday. I will say later today, Tom, and I know you're safe, and I'm glad that you are over in the Pensacola area. You'll be making your way back to Tallahassee today. We could both use a libation this evening, a little happy hour libation. I think we could all raise a glass. And so this evening, early, 4:59 and 59 seconds, that's going to happen. That is going to happen.
Something tells me you're not going to abide by the rules of 5 o'clock. What silly rules those are anyway. Yeah, my goal is to be in the car in enough time to arrive by, say, the second or third inning of the ball game tonight, so I can sit down and have a drink and watch the ball game. That's my goal, and I think I'll be able to achieve that. But it's you feel numb in a situation like this because you know how close it was for us. But there are so many who are listening to us that might be in the Tampa Bay area or up the west coast of the state of Florida, somewhere between Tampa and Perry, in Perry. Just so many places in the Apalachicola Bay. Our minds and hearts are still with you. If we sound a little distracted, it's because we know what you're going through right now, and we know how difficult. Well, no, we don't know how difficult that is, but please know that we're thinking about you. And so it's nice to have a distraction for us, but you don't want to be tone deaf here. A lot of people might be using this show as a distraction in far worse circumstances. So our hearts are with you, and we hope you get a little entertainment value out of what we're about to do.
Yeah, and against that backdrop, let's proceed and talk about this game. We both think, Tom and I were talking off the air, and again, this is going to be kind of a relaxed, bellying up style of a pod today. We both think this is imminently winnable. I know in the prediction segment, Tom, for Warchant Report, you did pick us to win. I did not, partly because of some odd superstition where I said, well, last week was the first time I picked against us and we won. So I'll continue to pick against us and hope that we continue to win. But the other part of it is I don't trust us, and it is imminently winnable, and I could see exactly why somebody would pick us to win this game. I almost picked us to win this game. The problem is I still have no faith in this offense, and I do believe, for the reasons that I think you're going to give as well, that Florida State could win a low-scoring game here because the defensive line could dominate this SMU offensive line. And I think the defensive personnel matches up with SMU quite well. And so I feel like you could keep this low scoring in the same way that you kept the Cal game low scoring. I do also know, though, that SMU is going to play at a very high level from an intensity standpoint. This is the game they circled. You heard the way that Rhett Lashley spoke of Florida State. He's not having any of it in terms of his team seeing a 1-3 squad rolling in. He talked about how, listen, the tape doesn't lie. You talk to NFL scouts, they'll tell you there's a ton of talent still on that team. Every now and then when I watch it on film, I see it flash. I know it's still there. I know Mike's a good coach. He said all the things that a coach does when he's trying to get his team to guard against an upset based solely on the record that they see coming to town. I think he realizes that Florida State, if Florida State was to click and make the most of their athleticism and talent, they could easily go in there and beat his team. So he's guarding against it. I think you'll see a pretty intense SMU team. And I just wonder if Florida State's offense can do enough not to let down this defense and see if this defense tires over the course of this game because the offense puts them in less than desirable situations. That's my fear, and I don't trust them.
Well, look, you're fair not to trust them. I'm not saying I do. I think the opportunity is before them, and they proved to have enough in the tank to take advantage of myriad opportunities and barely beat Cal. But like they did it. That's a mental hurdle cleared. SMU benefits greatly from this being an 8 p.m. kick because last week's game against TCU is essentially a rivalry game. You're in the same footprint. There's coaching ties that back to SMU in that game as well. So there's a bit of like a revenge factor. So I think on balance, they might be still coming down from a game that they put a lot of emotional eggs into a basket for last week. And I think Lashley is trying to psychologically guard against that and force their will. The 8 o'clock kick is going to help them, though, in a huge way. And then for us, how much are we distracted about what's going on back home? That's the human element of all that plays into it as well. How many of our players know somebody or, have been affected themselves in some indirect way or direct way? So there's a couple of subtext things that are going on there. But when you get to the trenches of this thing, it's one thing, and I wrote about this in Third and Lang. I'm not sure if it's live yet on the site, but I've already written it. And 66 points looks scary. Like, I got you. It does. But SMU's resume is another weird one. We're at the end of September, and yet you don't really know too much about them. You cannot speak in definitives about what SMU is because they played Nevada back when we played in Ireland, right? That game was weird, and they had to rally to win that game. They played, was it Houston Christian? I think you said it earlier this week, like whoever it was. BYU's a legitimate team they played, and then you see 60 points against TCU. But did you know that SMU's offense is averaging 5.1 yards per play, which is 88th in the country? And did you know in their two power games, if you average the performance against BYU and a TCU defense that is so pathetic, last year's Wake Forest looks at them and says, what the hell is wrong with you? In those two games, they averaged 4.8 yards per play offensively. That would be good enough for, I think, 104th in the country. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It would still be better than us offensively yards per play. I'm not trying to say that they're worse than us because few teams are, literally. But this is an offensive team that is a one-trick pony. Their quarterback, Jennings, has yet to complete a shot play downfield of 20-plus yards. If you combine last year with this year, he's 3 for 25 in shots down the field. So you're not afraid of the deep ball. If they're going to hit the deep ball, it's going to be because of play action or gimmicks or tricks or something along those lines. You're scared as hell of Brashard Smith, who is a really dynamic playmaker. But Jennings himself isn't as elusive as Haynes King. He's not as fast as Thomas Castellanos. And I'm looking at that offensive line for SMU get derailed by a 3-man rush of BYU, and I'm salivating at that opportunity. Now, of course, there's a whole other side of the ball that Florida State has to exceed with, and by exceed, I mean hit 20 points or 24 points. But the opportunity, I believe, is before them in this game to be able to shut down what SMU does offensively. And there'll be some tricks that they have to be prepared for. But, man, I'm telling you, this is not a team that dropped 60 last week that you should be afraid of because they could drop 50 on us. I don't see that.
Well, if you look at the game props and you look at the various lines and you look at halves and totals and those things, Vegas does not think that SMU is going to drop a ton of points. In fact, where you're beginning to get plus money is if you think they're going to have more than 27 points, Tom. Right. You get plus 100 on more than 27 points. So they don't think SMU is going to move the ball. I mean, if you're telling me a team that just lit it up, and we've seen those totals, and you just referenced them, if you're telling me that Vegas says, we'll give you a plus 100 if you think they can score more than 27 points. Mm-hmm. I mean, they know that that's a charade, and they know FSU's defense is good up front, is good up front. I have question marks certainly about the second and third levels, but I would tell you that I think they're good up front. So let's see how hard they play. Let's see how locked in they are. Mike said this week that he thought the offense was close to busting out. Sure, that's a relative term given that we've been a god-awful offense that's almost unspeakable. So does he mean they're close to busting out and finally scoring 24 points in a game, 28 points in a game? Perhaps. I think that's probably what he's alluding to because there have been plays, as you've talked about and we've talked about, and Dominic Robinson has referenced. There have been plays there. After a while, when you've played 4 games, it really falls on deaf ears to hear the coach say, well, we had to play this. We dialed this up. We had this. We just missed on this. That's what bad teams do, guys. That's it. I hear coaches all around the country. It's not just Mike. We've seen some bad teams here at Florida State before. I remember when things started to go south for Jimbo Fisher. He would say things like, well, I mean, it's out the gate. It's right there. It's right there. And he would say it every week. And you're like, well, yeah, after a while, man, it's not, because you guys never executed. Remember those tunnel screens? Yeah, man. I don't care how many times you called that tunnel screen. It never worked. And you can tell me, you can freeze frame all you want on the video. Hey, it's right. See it right. It's right there. He's going to score. Yeah, well, yeah, but it's not going to be completed. It's never completed. It does, or blocked. So I don't care how many times you tell me that it's right there. It's like these screens we watch right now in this offense, Tom. They're having to use the screen game to try to alleviate pressure, because all these teams are just overloading and taking advantage of you, and you're running that motion stuff and the end around and the screens and presumably the quick game to try to get them to back off, but we never execute them. Any of them. We don't execute any of them. So I get why you're doing it. I understand what you're trying to combat with those play calls. And those are the things that I think he goes back and looks at and says, well, it's right there. It's right there. Well, yeah, maybe, but they don't execute it. So I don't know.
Oh, yeah. This is not a game where I'm saying it's the offense that's going to set the pace and that's how you win. The defense has to be very good. But I think the path is there, and the precedent is there with what you're watching, what SMU runs. Because even in the BYU game, you might say, well, they started Preston Stone. Well, they had a plan for both quarterbacks in that game. I think the first 4 drives, they went 2 apiece, and that was scripted. And then they realized after Stone's 3rd drive, we can't block, so Jennings has to be our guy. I think partially the reason that Jennings is their starter is because they know the offensive line is deficient.
Yeah.
And so I'm sure they'll be prepared for that in this game. And they'll be prepared with it or for it, with those motions and with the test of the second-level defenders. For what it's worth, buddy, I thought they were better at that last week. There were still some busts. Of course there were. How could there not be with this group? But they were much better in that regard. They got beat more aerially. That's how Cal got to 400 yards, I thought, was more through giving up 2nd and 3rd and longs. It wasn't that they isolated a tight end and through motion they created an opening for a tight end over the middle or a back out of the backfield.
Right.
They get killed with the rail. It wasn't the same thing as Memphis. We were surprised by that. The Deitch's kid made plays on the perimeter more than he did over the middle of the field. So in a way, I think they did a better job of communicating all that stuff. And again, this is an SMU group that doesn't have a dynamic receiver. I'm staying away from the offense in order to find a way to win in Florida State's offense, because you cannot, with a straight face, talk about Florida State's offense is going to be the reason that they win the football game. This has to be about the defense, but there's real opportunity for this defense to have dominant stretches tomorrow night.
Yeah, and when I tried to come up with a plan that would see the offense not be the catalyst for a win, but a reason that you don't lose is a better way to describe that. I said it's the straight ahead run game, and you and I have been on that train for a while. Like, this team does a better job because of all the girth they have up front. They're all big. They're very, very big. If they lean on you, you might be able to fall forward for 3 or 4. And that's the essential element of that inside zone run game, right? You get 3 or 4 yards and you're not behind the chains. I brought up a stat on the Warchant report, Tom, that was staggering to me when I looked it up. Florida State is one of the worst teams in the country in terms of down and distance on 3rd down. They average 3rd and 8.5. Buddy, that is criminal. I mean, what are we doing out here? And everybody knows that the only way that you can average 3rd and 8.5, which is one of the worst in the country, is if you're awful on 1st and 2nd down. That's the only way that you get to that point. Well, guess what? I looked it up. Your average yards per 1st down play run is also one of the worst in all of college football. They don't win 1st down. Well, guess what? They didn't win 1st down last year, and they had a quarterback that was decisive, and they had 2 NFL wide receivers. So it speaks to a systemic problem with Mike right now with this offense. It's nothing you're going to solve overnight, I don't think. But I do think one of the ways that you help mitigate these many problems on 1st and 2nd down, which leads to the nightmare on 3rd down, is that you've got to find a way to win a little bit on 1st down in the run game. They did last week, especially in the first half. They won enough that we saw a lot of 2nd and 7s and 6s. And because we saw a lot of those, we saw plenty of 3rd and 3s, which is not 3rd and 8. And it gives you a fighting chance, and the defense has to play you honest. So it would be nice. By the way, I think if you're able to do that even a little bit, then you're able to keep that SMU offense, which has been pretty good, off the damn field. So you eat up the clock. I think Florida State, it's so weird. We talk about this a lot when you play teams that are lesser than or an underdog seeking to pull an upset. You always talk about they want to shorten the game. They want this thing to be about less plays and have it be 40 to 55 plays if possible and get the hell out of Dodge. They want to be in the fourth quarter within striking distance. And they can maybe pull an upset. The favorite gets a little tight because they're late in the game and it's still within striking distance. But it's weird. Florida State has to kind of be that team. Florida State right now has to try to, shorten games. They can't run a lot of plays because eventually they get exposed.
Correct. I would say, again, if you're looking at the best skill player on the field, SMU has that guy in Brashard Smith. He's the best skill position on the field tomorrow night. The quarterback doesn't scare me a ton, but for FSU offensively, where I can kind of see Mike's point, and I'll couch it properly after, but I'm just going to, here's where I see him being correct. You got a chance to have 14 points basically instantly in the game, and there's a holding call inside the 10-yard line that short circuits that drive. You end up throwing an unforgivable interception, which would have been, for me, the reason to bench your quarterback the rest of that's it. In that situation, you can't have it. So that drive goes from 7 to 0 because of two ridiculous moments. Now, you have had more ridiculous moments than that. That's who you are until you're not. So I hear you on that. But at that point in the game, you got 130 yards. You're 20 minutes into the game. You're on pace to have 400, 500 yards of offense. And the group didn't respond well to it. They just didn't. And you got to be mentally tougher. I think that's what he's talking about, is he's seeing signs of maybe the mental toughness it takes to absorb some sort of shock to the system and then press forward. And I agree with you. I think that only equals, 24, 27 points if they can get there. But if I told you before kickoff that they're going to score 27, I'd ask you, what percentage chance do you think there is that they win? And I'll bet you give me a pretty high number.
Yeah, I think so. Well, I think I'd give you a 60-40 number that they would win. Oh, wow. I do think SMU is going to put some points on the board in this game. I think Rhett Lashley's a really good play caller. I've always been impressed with him. He finds ways to score with lesser teams. And I do think he'll have a little something in store for us in this game. I'm not saying they're going to run roughshod over Florida State's defense. We'll adjust to whatever that is, and we'll play pretty well. But I could see this game being a 27-24 type game or a 24-21 type game, and so it would make me nervous still. I guess I'm never satisfied, Tom. I'd like you to tell me we scored 28 points.
Oh, sure.
Points. You feel pretty good about it.
Yeah. No, every point is valuable, and I hope our coach thinks that way moving forward, where if you're in a third and obvious and you're on the 30-yard line tomorrow night,
run a draw and then kick the field goal if you have to.
I don't care if Fitzy misses it. It's the right move. It's the right take.
There's no evidence that he's going to miss it. I mean, he's playing so good, right?
Sure. I'm just saying process. Here's your 2 years ago, the process was go for it on fourth down. Your kicker sucks. It's the same. It's the same kid. We're 2 years in the future, and it's the exact opposite situation. It's the best player for you in 3rd and 16 on their 28-yard line is your kicker, not your quarterback. And so call 3rd and 16 for your kicker, not your quarterback. And I hope that maybe that interception teaches them the lesson from last week. We all know that home-cooked meals are so much better for you, but you don't always have the time to pull it off, especially in football season. But with HelloFresh handling all of the meal planning, the shopping, and most of the prep, it's easier than ever to get dinner on the table. Plans change and life gets busy. That's why HelloFresh lets you easily customize your delivery from week to week. You could tailor everything to your schedule by adjusting your delivery date or skip a week if you're not able to cook at home or you're just going to be on the road and traveling. Easily customize your meals with protein or veggie swaps as well. And don't forget, you can check out HelloFresh Market for more delicious add-on items if you want to mix it up and jazz it up for your weekly deliveries. Football season is absolutely nuts from a workflow standpoint. This is where simplicity really can come in handy. It saves you time because every minute counts in football season. This is where HelloFresh has saved me time. HelloFresh sending things directly to my door, minimal prep, cooking fresh ingredients, things that are good for my nutrition. It takes stress off my plate and puts healthy food on my plate. That's why I love HelloFresh. For free breakfast for life, go to HelloFresh.com/free Warchant. One free breakfast item per box while your subscription is active. That's free breakfast for life just by going to HelloFresh.com/free Warchant. HelloFresh, America's #1 meal kit.
We're going to do a pregame show tomorrow, you and I, at 9 a.m. and we'll get into the keys to the game and the hows and whys and all that. And we want to invite all of you guys on Warchant TV, or you can listen to the pod afterwards. But it's 9 a.m. tomorrow. We'll do the pregame show, the Warchant game day that we're accustomed to doing. I look forward to it, but I will, share some elements that may cross over there. I think the key for Florida State in this game is early on. They have to withstand any sort of negativity or momentum shifting type plays. Like just play it honest, be smart, live to fight another day, punt it if you have to, flip field position, trust your defense, try to create a situation that is very, very similar to what you had against Cal, where you got into the second half and it was always there for the taking for either side. So you never felt like you were out of it. You never felt like, oh, woe is us. Here we go again type things. I think there's a chance with this team. Their psyche isn't great. And I do think that if Florida State were to fall behind, and in particular the offense is struggling, we see a series of 3-and-out type possessions, and then all of a sudden there's a big play. You're going to have a ravenous crowd, if you will, for as much as they can have at SMU, who are hungry to get this win in the ACC, obviously. I don't think you can afford in any way to fall, 10-0, 14-3. I think you're in deep trouble if that happens. So let's survive early in that first quarter. Maybe even put a little something together and get up early, and announce your presence with authority in the sense that we're here. We're going to be here. We'll be here for all 4 quarters. We haven't quit on the season. We're fine. We get you're pumped up, but you're still physically inferior to us. Here you go. Get some of this. You got to put yourself in that position. It's a different animal when we're talking about Clemson next week and Miami down the road and all that. That's a different conversation. But in this one, you really do have a physical advantage up front. And I think that you got to make sure you withstand any body blows that you receive early. Tom, you reference it. I talk about it all the time. When you're devoid of confidence or you don't have a lot of reason to be confident, certainly not arrogant, right? You can't have bad things happen. You need to have good things happen to you early that foster that belief that, oh, no, we're fine. We're fine. We figured it out last week. We're getting better. Here's another chance to build upon that. We had a building block last week. Let's add to it. Let's get to 2-3. Hey, all of a sudden 2-3 sounds okay. At 2-3, you see a path to a decent season. Not a great season, but a decent season. At 1-4, you see a path to disaster.
Yeah. 1-4 means no bowl. That's what I think.
Yes.
And make no mistake, like a game, you're correct. You're talking about Clemson, Miami, Notre Dame. Those are games where you have to play at and above your potential pretty much everywhere, based upon what you've done so far. This isn't one of those, though. And you're right. The atmosphere is going to – SMU's played at home like this whole year. What the hell? But so they had the BYU game, then they had the bye, then they had the TCU game. It's all – they've just been living there. They're like Florida most years in Florida's program existence. They just don't leave. They continue to play basically in their backyard or directly at home. So that fan base is ready for this moment. They're pumped for this moment. Lashley already puts weird stuff on film. Like, there was a formation where they had 4 receivers to the right and they call a tunnel out of it. It is like the weirdest looking thing because it's like triple slot, 1 out wide. And then so you're going to see stuff that you've never seen before if you're Florida State defensively. And that's where the fear comes in, because it's kind of like we have to see it and then get burned by it and then think about it and then put our hand back there, get burned by it again, and then put our hand back there and get burned by it again. And then maybe we start to learn, but we're going to put our hand back there and we're going to get burned again. And then 2 weeks later, we realize how to fix it. So that is where the fear comes from. But the thing is that they're not loaded with athletes there. So if you're just even close to where you need to be, and it's not Brashard Smith, you're going to get these guys on the ground if you care to play physically. And that's the thing that I'm buoyed by last week is they played physically. They made mistakes, but those young kids, Edwin Joseph is physical as hell. Kirkland got downhill. Shaheem Brown's getting back into the swing of things, and he got downhill, made a couple of plays. They're playing physically. So that's where I feel encouragement that there's a fighting chance here.
Yeah, that is my hope. I am still at a place where, because of what you just described, Rhett Lashley being who he is and his ability to dial up really bizarre-looking plays and our inability to communicate effectively on a consistent basis, leads me to believe that there are going to be a couple of busts that lead to some easy points. And that's why I say you got to be able to withstand that. Hopefully those things don't happen early in the game.
And they lead to 3. It's a gain of 35, but then you clamp it down and they're on our 17, you clamp it down, they kick. Like that, then okay, that's one trick, Rhett. You just spent one of your wild cards and it only got you 3. The other thing is Jennings, while he's not accurate, deep down the field, at least in his career, 3 for 25. That's an NFL with a pick and an intercept and a touchdown. His NFL passer rating on those throws so far is worse than just being 0 for 25. You'd have a higher rate.
Yeah.
So I'm really tempting the football gods for a shot play to hit us. I understand that. But also he gets nervous and he bails out of the pocket a lot and the ball will come high. So situations like Edwin Joseph last week, you could see he had a nose for the football. A lot of these young guys have a nose for the football. They turn around, they might find something in their breadbasket, and you can't count on turnovers to lead you to the promised land. But this is a quarterback who, if he feels the pressure, and I think that the line's going to win up front, you might have a couple of opportunities to come away with the football, and that's the recipe for something like winning tomorrow night.
We talk about the fostering of confidence over time and having enough impact plays that lead you to believe and consistently lead you to believe. Well, that's the benefit of playing those young guys and having some good things happen to them because of that nose for the football you're talking about. Edwin Joseph making that play obviously emboldens him to be aggressive, and you got to believe there are more guys like that. You see it with Quindarius Jones, who's right there on some plays and will have opportunities, we think, to make those plays. So long, so physical, opportunities on poorly thrown balls to make a play. Maybe as this season wears on, Tom, we'll continue to be excited about all those young guys making plays. There's a chance there. They're not loaded with talent, but they really do have some guys on that back end that you like. And so if the ball is going to be put in danger, you've got athletes, you got kids ready to make plays. They're not scared. We saw that. They're aggressive.
Well, and this is a kid that, look, he's completing 63% of his passes, I think, in Kevin Jennings. But if it's not a screen situation, it's 55. It's 50. So he's running up the numbers by doing the wise thing, which is getting the ball in Brashard Smith's hands near the line of scrimmage, and then letting that dude eat and go to work. And he's been an absolute monster against both power teams that they played. So I'm not saying they don't have somebody who can change the scoreboard just by touching the football. They do. But, their quarterback historically, if it ain't close to the line of scrimmage, it's just a little bit more accurate than a coin flip. You have to be ready in those situations to take the ball.
I want to thank our friends at Tried and True Consulting. We've missed the last couple of days with the storm looming and then passing through late last night. We thank Tried and True and their partnership with the Jeff Cameron Show. Obviously, this is a business that Tallahassee knows about now and all over the state, really. Noles, Don and Joe, both of them, they've added Rusty to the mix. You should reach out to them today, especially if you guys want to get involved with the Tried and True ad program, the ad board. If you've got a waiting room of any kind, say you're a bank or a restaurant or bar, any really retail location with open wall space, they'll come in and install this thing for you. 2/3 of it you can use for whatever you want. You run your specials, any of those things, you can have the TV running. They'll come in and place that for you for absolutely free. It's ideal for generate revenue, and you find out ways to expose more of what you do and other businesses do around town. TriedandTrueConsulting.com. I want to make sure I got that out there today because again, we've missed some shows. We've got people we've got to work with today too, Tom. We've got to catch up, solving for the future. We could have just said the last 30 minutes was solving for the future with ISF, right? I mean, we just got done trying to figure out a way to get this done tomorrow. You and I will solve for the future with our friends at ISF right now. You and I are really of the same mindset then. This has got to be a game in which the total is no more than 44, 48 total.
Yeah.
Right? Somewhere in there.
Unless we're running up a number that we don't see coming. It's got to be. And again, I've listed out a lot of reasons why I think that SMU is vulnerable here. I'll list one more, is that Patrick Payton needs to play like he did last week. Josh Farmer was the leader. I'm not taking anything away from the guy who was the best player on the field for Florida State last week. Either side of the ball, best player on the field was Josh Farmer. But you saw Patrick Payton involved in the spy game a lot more, and you saw him make a couple of big plays in space, either against the quarterback or another player, one of which that would have certainly been a touchdown, but a couple others that, you're saving a lot of yards, and he's using instincts there. I know they'll deploy guys like Blake Nicholson again to spy, and obviously you can't let the center climb up and block you like he did last week in a key situation. He'll learn from that. That's a mistake of youth. but I'll be okay in this game if in certain circumstances Peyton is not rushing the passer, but is in a setting of a spy and allowing the interior of those guys to dictate. Maybe Marvin Jones continues his progress. But you will need a spy in this game, and that's one way to solve for this quarterback. It's just what you're going to end up seeing unless he plays the game of his life tomorrow, which he might. When people get amped up, they do these things. But Jennings is not nearly as dynamic as Castellanos as a runner. He's good, but he's not like that. And he doesn't make you miss in a phone booth the way Haynes King does. So you've got opportunities to bring him into the ground in space. And Patrick Peyton, to me, is one of those key players. If you're going to tell me, how do you solve for keeping SMU at 21, at 17, I think Patrick Peyton has to be a humongous piece to the puzzle in multiple ways tomorrow.
We wholeheartedly agree. That's interesting. We usually do. We typically see football in a very similar vein, but you just took one of the points I was going to make and hammered it home nicely, so I won't belabor the point. I'll only say that our friends at ISF, not only local here in Tallahassee, but servicing state government, local agencies all across the country as well. They've helped here locally with Department of Economic Opportunity, Reemployment Assistance Modernization. They did that with the Department of Children and Families, a feasibility study for them. Department of Health, Department of State, Florida Department of Business and Professional Regulation. So many things. They process innovation that they do. They worked with the Healthcare Administration. They worked for the Florida Department of Health with childcare food programs. This is a great, great group at ISF doing wonderful things in our community, doing wonderful things across the country. That's something that we can celebrate. ISF.com to learn more. ISF.com. We'll keep it right here as we continue for a few more minutes, and you want me to cue it up? We can. The red zone? You want to go straight?
We're gonna hit another one. I can think of some questions on the fly if you want. I have it. I can play it here if you like.
Oh, well, look at this. See, so we're in two separate spots. Tom's not in his normal place. I'm in a studio, but we're not even using the setup that we normally have. So, yeah, I mean, we've got to make sure we take care of our people. So if you want to do it, I'm ready to go. It's fine with me. I'm ready to hear it.
Welcome to the majesty.
Every freaking rep.
The elegance.
To win the game. Oh, he hits the upright. It's no good.
You have entered.
Someone burned down the funeral home. You burnt the funeral home.
Lives will be changed.
Sideline. Touchdown. Unbelievable.
Mothers will cry.
When you see your players give all that they have and you lose that way, it's tough.
Legacies are etched into eternity.
I know who I am.
North, South Dakota was his brother from West Virginia.
This is the Red Zone.
That's good to know.
In which you can go to noleretirement.com, scoring in the red zone. Make sure you join their email list, and you'll be able to claim your free retirement readiness assessment. That way you know, look, I got it. I don't have it. What do I need to do? Yeah, they'll let you know at Artisan Financial Strategies. Our guy, Adam, fellow Nole, smart, works for a great company, Artisan Financial Strategies, over 30-plus years of experience. NoleRetirement.com to learn more. You want that planning experience on your side. You guard against rising health care costs. You set up to punch it in the red zone. The retirement red zone, as we like to call it. And so it is, Tommy. Let's go. First down. What do we got?
Oh, boy. Okay, first down, over or under 14.5 carries for Lawrence Toafili tomorrow night.
So this is interesting. I brought this up on Tuesday during Seminole Headlines, and Ira was like, yeah, no, he's dynamic, but I don't know how many carries he can handle. He's a little banged up, all of those things. They do have to find a second back, and Cam Davis has not exactly been electrifying when given the opportunity. He's still figuring it out, I mean, he will. We don't have a doubt about that, but he's just not there yet. And they've got a slew of injuries at the running back position too. So it's kind of like, what do we got? Who are you going to use? I know you'd say Keziah Holmes, right? You'd like to see a little bit more, although he hasn't been great when he's had opportunities. So
no, I think Keziah presses because he gets so few opportunities, and there's just no rhythm to it. There's no rhythm. It makes less sense than experimental jazz in terms of the rhythm. It drives me batty, and it was my phobia before the season started is they wouldn't stick to a plan, and they're not sticking to a plan. But I'm hoping that maybe last week slaps them across the face like a cold fish, that they say, okay, you know what? Maybe if we give Lawrence the ball a dozen times or more, that we'll let him get into a rhythm. He was good. Hey, guys, you realize Lawrence was pretty good last week? Yeah, maybe we should do that again. I'm hoping.
He was 15 for 70 plus and looked like a difference maker. You put the number at 14.5. I'll say under.
Okay, fair. If you said over, I'd feel better about a win. All right, second down. Yes or no, Joshua Farmer will be Florida State's best defensive player again this week?
Yes. I think he is every week that he wants to be. I think he's a legitimate NFL player. I think Joshua Farmer, it's interesting when you go through, and there's certainly a lot more of them on defense, Tom. I don't know if you ever read Pat Kerwin's book, but and I'm paraphrasing the title. It's about looking away from the ball. Like, don't follow the ball, I think might be the title. And Pat Kerwin's as good as they are in the NFL. He's a former exec and coach and everything else. So he knows the game backwards and forwards. But one of the things I remember about the conversation in one of the chapters was that when you see a matchup of evenly matched teams, like you got any game where the two teams are pretty equal and the two coaches are pretty equal, the thing you're always going to look for are how many players on either side of the ball does team A or team B have that defy the X's and O's. So a player that could just make something, it's not there because of the X's and O's, they just make a play. So your great receivers are covered. They may be bracketed, but they make that play 90% of the time. A quarterback desperate in the moment just says, I'm going to throw it Justin Jefferson's way because I have a feeling he's going to make that play, whatever that might be, right? I think Josh Farmer is the only guy really that we've seen consistently. Like, you can try to double him. He'll split it. He's too strong. If you just have a singular blocker on him, you can move him around a little bit. They had him off the edge last week, and he made a play. It was nuts to see a guy that big coming off the edge. He's one of the guys that I would think falls in the category of X's and O's, where he kind of, to a certain extent defies it. Not in the same sexy way that skill players do, but as a wrecking crew, and he's that kind of guy.
He's the guy that you have to account for. I mean, like, look, Peyton can make plays. Jones Jr. can make plays. He's proven finally that he can. Darrell Jackson is huge and to be worried about. But if I'm an offensive coordinator, I'm scared to death of 5, and I have to make sure that we do whatever we can to stop him. And you're right. It's funny how his career, he's been a different player at different points of his career. He was known for more quicks. Like, he wasn't small, but he was kind of one of those quick defensive interior guys. And then the last year, I mean, he is massive.
He's a horse.
For my money, it's the best body by storms story of any of them. That dude got larger than I thought was possible for that frame, and he's still strong and quick. So you can put him outside, or you can run a stunt with him and get him isolated against the tackle, and you can cave it in that way. That's why I think you can deploy Peyton as a spy a little bit here, because he's just been a wrecking crew.
So the answer is a definitively, I say yes, he will be. Okay, third down.
Third down, we will see. I don't know how to term this because a snap count doesn't work. Quindarius Jones will have an expanded role this week versus last week. Yay or nay?
Yeah, I think in the back end of the secondary, you're seeing a real willingness for Florida State to go and play guys that are young. Corner, safety, I think they're willing to rotate players at both those positions. They're gaining trust in some of the younger corners and younger safeties. I think they have an opportunity to continue to build off of that. We've begged them to. I think Quindarius is going to be a really good player for you. He's so big, it defies logic. When you watch him, you think, he's not going to be fast enough, but he seems fast enough. And when he gets his hands on you, he also is able to make plays because he's so long that if you're not really accurate with a throw, he's getting his paws on it in some way. So yes, I believe his role will continue to expand. And I like the question because it enables me to talk about the best part of what this team is right now. There's not a lot to latch on to. There's not a lot to hit your wagon to. I mean, there's a lot of frustration within the fan base, all of us watching this team wondering what happened. But the one area where you continue to look and say, I like what I see there. It's, to me, those young corners and young safeties.
Yeah, 100% agreed. And you get excited, like you actually legitimately get excited when.
Yeah,
when
you get pumped to see him. Yeah, I agree.
And this is why we recommend, maybe letting the younger quarterback play, because people can, let's just say he makes a few plays. He doesn't have to be perfect, but then people start to get excited, and they don't look at the record as much. Which, look, they should look at the record. But if you're the coach trying to get money from people to help you make your program better, you need them excited. Okay, so I've got two more, both around the passing game, rapid fire here. Florida State's leading receiver, any position, just their leading pass catcher, over or under 57.5 receiving yards.
Over.
Okay.
I'll go over.
Did you have an image of a player pop in your brain?
No, I still think it's Benson. I do think it's Benson. I think he's started to figure some things out with him. I'd like it to be Hakeem Williams. I'd really like it to be Hakeem. I think at some point your 5-star receiver is going to have to start to make an impact that you think a 5-star receiver should have on college football games. I get it. It's been a weird start to that young man's career. He came in last year, was immediately willing to block. He was unselfish. He got himself in great shape. He made an electrifying play in a nothing game in which you had a huge lead, but it kind of wet the whistle a little bit, and we all got excited about it. Then he was beginning to emerge in camp and look like he was about to come into his own when he had the hamstring injury. He missed all of the rest of camp, missed the first couple of games of the season. All of a sudden, you're like, man, are we going to go 2 full years without this kid who were, NFL body type we were so excited about? Are we going to go that long without this kid making an impact on this team? So I would really love it if he had an impact on this game. But I think the more likely candidate is Benson at this point. But I'll say over.
All right, last one, because I'm taking the over. Over under 1.5 touchdown passes for DJU.
Well, I I don't love this SMU defense, so I could certainly see DJ finally having a game that maybe we're satisfied with. It's a 18 for 30, 204 yards and 2 touchdowns. That would feel like a revelation. You'd be like, oh, how about that game? But I'll take under until he does something to really lead me down the path. I'll let you have that one for yourself.
It's fair. And I think 18 of 30 for 204 yards and 2 touchdowns puts Florida State in a position to score 24 points. I think it does.
There it is.
I think it does.
Yeah. We'll give you game prediction, score, and all that good stuff tomorrow. But we're going to wrap up for this little edition of Conversation JCS/Bellying Up. Content to get out to you guys quick this afternoon. Hopefully you're safe where you are. Hopefully you guys are okay. And we really appreciate you, as always, listening. We're okay here. Camerons are all right. Tallahassee's all right. Tom seems to be all right. We're all hanging in. Be well, everybody. We'll talk to you again real soon. Peace.